The Kremlin papers appear to show Putin's plot to put Trump in White House. This is from The Guardian, and it's from Luke Harding. Now, if you don't know who Luke Harding is the guy that Aaron Mate humiliated after Luke Harding wrote a book called Collusion, and there just wasn't any evidence of collusion. And so he kept saying, do you have any evidence for the collusion? He kept saying, sort of, it's sort of, kind of, mostly. And so then he eventually just left the interview. And so this is Luke Harding's latest comedy piece. And The Guardian still prints it. The last one he printed, we debunked in real time, and it led to Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks smearing Julian Assange. The last time he wrote an article in The Guardian, it was completely, resoundingly debunked as garbage CIA talking points, which it was. But here is David Korn repeating this. He says, wow, The Guardian obtains a Kremlin document showing Putin signed off on a covert plan to help elect Trump in 2016 because Trump was unstable and a Trump presidency would divide, weaken, and harm the U.S. Mission accomplished, says David Korn, the pretend journalist, hack propagandist. He says, mission accomplished. He's saying all this is true. That's what he's saying. Boy, they are really stretching. They really need to fill season 5 of RussiaGate. That's what's happening. And I can't believe Luke Harding is still writing for the show. He still has that gig. And here's Craig Murray debunking. He says, the next Luke Harding MI6 host, passing off forged Kremlin minutes, saying things like, it's acutely necessary to use all possible force to facilitate Trump's election into the post of U.S. president. Hilarious. I'm sure that's how they talked. Let's do a little bit more. Possibly dangerous drinking game suggestion. Have a shot every time you see the word appear, suggest, apparently, or the phrase assess to be in this made-up bullshit Luke Harding article. Very well said, Brian McDonald. Very well said. The walls are closing in and the whiskey bottle's empty. Okay. Here's Max Blumenthal saying, instead of retracting Luke Harding's demonstrably false, discredited articles, The Guardian publishes more. Does Harding have compromise on The Guardian editorial leadership? That's what I think. I think that Luke Harding has some kind of blackmail on the editor at The Guardian, and that's why The Guardian disgraces itself over and over and over by printing Luke Harding garbage that everyone knows is garbage. I bet he has a pee-pee tape from one of the Guardian holiday parties that he's got the Guardian editor getting pee-peed on. I'm guessing that's what it is. This is my guess. By the way, there's documents that I have that show that to be true. And they've been verified by me. What is this most preferable and scientific way to decide? So here's how they're going to show. Aaron, this is awesome. Watch this. So what is the most preferable and scientific way to distinguish between fake and authentic text language? Language. The Guardian has posted small extract from the Kremlin document presumed to be authentic. I have counted 4 linguistic errors and a couple of dubious instances of words. So what he's saying is this is not how Russian people talk. So this guy, who's obviously knows his Russian, is saying they've got at least 4 linguistic errors and a couple of dubious instances of just from this one small extract. So what this guy's saying is this wasn't written by Russians. That's what that guy's saying. So here we go. So with a considerable degree of confidence, I can assume this is either Google translated text from foreign language to Russian or a text composed with the help of an unschooled Russian speaker, or both. It would be interesting to look at other original documents. That does have Luke Harding level journalistic prowess written all over it. Let's keep going a little bit more. But the real question is whether Luke Harding and the Guardian readers are actually so extraordinarily stupid as to believe that in Russia of 2016, people at the highest levels wrote with mechanical typewriters and the crudest ink ribbon I ever saw. So this is supposed to be from 2016. And this guy's like, really? They're using mechanical typewriters in 2016? Wow. Okay. And I love, so that was, ticket sales are dwindling, but yes, people still believe this stuff, Aaron. And here, Luke Harding's continued employment discredits all Western media. Even his headshot Even his headshot looks like he's dodging a question, doesn't it? Doesn't his headshot look like he's dodging a question? So let me bring you in. So go ahead, Aaron. Tell me what you want to tell me about this.
Well, look, as you say, because this is Luke Harding, by definition, it's fraud. The guy is a serial fabulist. As you pointed out, he published, before this story, the most ridiculous story I've ever seen. This where he claimed that Julian Assange, while he was caged in the Ecuadorian embassy, met 3 times with Paul Manafort in the most heavily surveilled place on earth. I mean, we've learned since then that the CIA was spying on Assange using the security firm that was supposed to be guarding Assange. Okay, so Harding comes out with this laughable fabrication that Assange and Manafort were holding secret meetings there.
You know what, Aaron? Yeah. I actually have that in. Let me put that. Let me show people. So here is that article that he wrote. Manafort held secret talks with Assange in Ecuadorian embassy. Sources say. Now, that wasn't in the original headline. They added that after they got piled on by people like Aaron and me and Glenn Greenwald and everybody else said this was a garbage story. So they added sources say. Trump ally met WikiLeaks founder months before emails hacked by Russians were published. And there it is, Luke Harding. So that's who that is. This is some fiction. I can't think if this is from RussiaGate season 1 or season 2, but this is it. And here's Glenn Greenwald. It was Harding who published one of the most sensationalized stories of the Trump era, that Manafort repeatedly met Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. It was utterly fabricated. Everyone knows it's bullshit. It never happened. Yet The Guardian has never corrected or retracted it, nor has the Young Turks, who repeated it breathlessly. Here's Chris Hayes. Chris Hayes says the source of this is a bit thin, or at least obscured, but it's the ultimate whoa if true. It's ball game if true. It's not true. You know what, Chris? I knew it wasn't true. In real time, I debunked the story. You know why? Because they said he met him 3 times at the embassy. It's the most photographed building in the world, and there's no pictures of him. And so that's how I know Chris Hayes is not a real journalist, but he's turned into a propagandist for sure. And underneath, this guy says, it's likely not true, Chris. No one, I repeat, no one ever got into the embassy without registering and being videotaped. There would definitely be a record of Manafort had been there. I don't know. I know I was there many times. So there's another blue check straightening his dumb ass out. This is so crazy that Chris Hayes does this. And here it is. Luke Harding, how Trump walked into Putin's web. This is the inside story of how a former British spy was hired to investigate Russia's influence on Trump and uncovered explosive evidence that Moscow had been cultivating Trump for years, by Luke Harding. She says Luke Harding should not be able to find employment anywhere more influential than the far sides of a cashier's counter. Yet here he is still getting his ridiculous stories published by one of the most influential media outlets in the English-speaking world. Here's what you tweeted out. I am told that MSNBC has not covered Luke Harding's latest RussiaGate hoax in The Guardian. Can anyone verify? Could it be that Luke is such a discredited scam artist that it not even the leading RussiaGate disinformation network will touch him? Ouch. Glenn retweeted you, and he said, this is good, but it should also extend to The Guardian. They published a bullshit Harding article everyone knows is a lie, claiming Paul Manafort met multiple times with Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy, and 2 years later, it's still up with no correction or retraction. The only change The Guardian ever made, here it is that they put sources say. That's the only thing they did. So go ahead. Now you talk. Go ahead. Now everybody knows the story.
Well, look, so again, start from the premise that anything that Luke Harding writes on this topic is fabricated. His source previously was Christopher Steele, the former British intelligence officer who hadn't been to Russia in years and then produced that dossier as opposition research for the Clinton campaign. It was used heavily by the FBI. It was hyped up by the media. There was a huge media campaign to make Christopher Steele look credible. Luke Harding was a big part of that. Ultimately, that collapsed because his thing was just so ridiculous. Of course, he came up with the P-tape. So what Luke Harding is doing now is engaged in more disinformation to try to save Christopher Steele's reputation. I wouldn't be surprised if Harding got this from Steele himself or someone close to Steele, because it's the exact same thing. It's people with no understanding of Russia using their imaginations to come up with something that can make their conspiracy theories and fantasies look credible. And you read this article, and again, there's not much to say about it because by now it's just so ridiculous. But there's, people you pointed out some of the absurdity, like that font from the 1940s on the typewriter, as if the Kremlin's typing it up on a 1940s typewriter. But the premise of the story is that the Kremlin has this meeting in January 2016, and it's then that they decide to launch this sweeping campaign to install Trump. But January 2016, Trump wasn't even the nominee yet.
No.
So are you saying that the Kremlin had the foresight to know at a time when everybody else was basically laughing at Trump and dismissing him as a joke? The Kremlin thought he had a serious chance, and that at that point they were going to go all in on this massive interference campaign? Of course not. The people who concocted this are coming up with a narrative that they need to try to make their previous fabrications look somewhat credible. And it's the exact same thing where it's like basically how a Western Russophobe chauvinist would imagine Russian officials speaking. It's the exact same thing, going on here. And that's what, now the funny thing is for 4 years of RussiaGate, this stuff worked. So when that dumb Manafort story came out in November 2018, that was a big bombshell story and all the networks covered it. MSNBC covered it, obviously. Now people like Chris Hayes, now they're voicing skepticism and they're not even covering it. And why? Well, A, RussiaGate is just too discredited, so they can't get away, I think, with looking that ridiculous anymore, or at least as ridiculous as they did before. B, there's no partisan utility, because back then they were using it as an excuse for not being able to challenge Trump in a meaningful way, and they were using it because that's what they were all, had vested all their energies in. But now they can't do that anymore. It doesn't have the partisan utility anymore. And the Biden administration itself is actually trying to open itself up to Russia a little bit. It's not being even as hawkish towards Russia as Trump. So it doesn't have the utility anymore for these people. So what did they do with this Luke Harding story? They just ignored it. It hasn't been covered, as we're speaking, to my knowledge, it hasn't even been covered on MSNBC yet. Whereas in the past, when it served a useful purpose, it would be covered nonstop. So what does that say? It says that no one ever believed this RussiaGate stuff all along. No one ever believed the bullshit reporting of Luke Harding. And now that they're not even willing to acknowledge what he's saying, they're also not going to go back and revisit all the other times when they peddled his fabrications, because they don't want to take responsibility for all the propaganda that they pushed. And of course, there are a few exceptions, like David Corn, who you mentioned, who are still willing to be duped by it. But it's a reflection that, like, it just doesn't have the utility that it used to. And basically, Luke Harding might be the final author of the final RussiaGate dud.
It sounds like it. So that's the whole. It's just amazing that they would go to the same guy, Luke Harding. Like, why wouldn't you go to a different guy? Because that guy's got the stink of this last article he wrote that everybody debunked and knows is garbage. Why wouldn't you find a new tool, a new dupe to go write your bullshit article? Like, why? That doesn't make sense that they would. They're so lazy. They're so bad. They're just, They are. They're so lazy and bad at this that I can see through it. I've been seeing through this since day one on RussiaGate. It's amazing. So so you're saying that even MSNBC isn't running with this bullshit story this time?
Even MSNBC, which survived off of RussiaGate for 4 years, was all they talked about. It was their top story. Every single possible development was amplified as the story of the day. And now they have something that on the surface, if they took it seriously, would confirm everything that they've been screaming about for 4 years. But they can't even acknowledge it now because for a combination of they got too embarrassed and it just doesn't serve the partisan function that it used to for them. It just doesn't.
Our live shows are back. August 4th, we're in Burbank. August 7th, we're in Chicago. We're going to Portland. We're going to Boston. We're going to everywhere. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for tickets.